started to have more success and more attention, I didn't like the attention that I got. I know it felt like I wanted to be somewhere where I could just start again in a way, if that makes sense.
What does attention look like and feel like for you?
I like people. It's great when someone says, hey, you did a good set, or I bought your record, or I listened to your radio show. But when people assume that you think you have status when you don't have status, I'm not there going like, yeah, it can be frustrating. And also, people, I just felt like people were being different with me. And I wanted to, and also, I went to Berlin, right? And it was like, literally, there was like 500 record stores. There was 500 clubs. It was mysterious, cool, exciting. It was something that I just wanted. I DJ'd once in Berlin, and I moved to Berlin about 3 months later, and that is textbook. So many people, and I used to meet people all the time in Berlin who'd never been there before, and they would move. You'd be like, yeah, when are you moving then? So I moved in 2011, and it was life changing. Yeah.
So just on that, just in terms of the decision to go to Berlin as opposed to, say, London or Manchester or Bristol or something like that, what was it about Berlin that attracted you to, was it about just leaving the UK per se?
Techno. I think, to be honest, the opening hours of the clubs really appealed. Right, I used to say my DJ name should be DJ 6 till 9. No rude connotations, because I was always booked to play 6 till 9. Always, or after them, like I always played, after Bambunu or after, like whoever the big name was, I was the local or the kind of second on the lineup guy who'd play the trippy set in the morning. And I loved that, imagine like 4 hours at like, 8 till 12 or something. You turn up and everyone, it literally stinks, you're like walking, you're like, woo, and you have to do 2 shots at the bar to sort of feel a bit dizzy. One of the decks goes, and you're like, oh my God, one of the decks gone. And then literally about a minute later, a guy who looks like he's not slept for 5 days, and he hasn't, turns up, with a sort of like almost like Iggy Pop kind of figure, and just like silently plugs a new deck in. That's Berlin, they get the job done. So I really, so that was life changing and very, I learned how to play clubs better in Berlin, big sound systems, people dance all night. I developed the technique. It's so funny as well of, all you British DJs, you all do that thing where you kill the bass and then put it back on again. It's like boom, 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 boom. Yeah, I got really into that. Yeah.
You were definitely in the right place to kind of bring that technique to the masses there.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. And as well, back reffing again. I was a teacher from 2002 to 2009. And then I had to give up because it was interfering with my dance music kind of exploits.
Well, you had to make I guess for a lot of people, and again, I guess this will come up when, you're talking that, we all have to obviously earn a living and until you create a situation where, essentially music is paying you, you've got to do whatever you can to obviously pay the bills, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people actually have a background in teaching. But I guess being a school teacher and being in education is, a lot, not as what's it called? The freedom is not, it's not there as much as, say, doing other jobs.
Yeah, it was, So it's ironic, or it's interesting that because I was a television editor in Liverpool using Avid in 1998. Then 2002 to 2009, I was a teacher. And then I did music full time. And then obviously what I'm doing now, which is I run a Patreon, I do mentoring. I try and encourage other artists and support them and nurture them. And it does involve video content. I've done a lot of editing, which I don't want to do. I hate editing. But it's a necessary evil. And obviously, so it's like I've combined teaching, video, and music.
I mean, we'll talk more about, the necessity to become, a kind of one-stop shop for, well, it's an extension of one's skills, right? You have skills in the studio, and then those skills are basically extended out into other people,
Well, what's interesting is I felt a lot as an artist, the limitations of being an artist. And by that, I mean the limitations of what the industry allowed you to do. Like I did a video diary series when I moved to Berlin in 2011, I was approached by a guy called Kojun Shimayama, who'd done stuff for Secret Sundays, lovely guy, and then Alex Cassian, who's now a well-known producer, and in those days he'd done a couple of things on Pets recordings and was very much up and coming. He's probably 21 or something like that. So they approached me and said, hey, can we help you with your label Bergerac? And I was like, well, what can you do? And Kojun was like, well, I make videos for Secret Sundays. And I was like, well, let's do some videos. And no one, I'm not being funny, but no one did a video diary series in 2011. And all I did was when I was doing like Berlin Fashion Week for All Saints, DJing, in a shop with Gold Panda and, basically get a load of free clothes, DJ, get drunk, or doing a live stream for Beatport, or playing with Mike Huckabee at the Sun Ra reel-to-reel session. I'd just get the guys along and we'd film it and I did. I think we did one every week. It was mental. We did one so I think we only did 8 before we burned out massively. But the favourite one I did was the breakfast set at About Blank, where I let them into my apartment, fell asleep again, and I actually genuinely fell asleep again. They filmed me, my alarm going off. And I got up and I basically, had a shower, brushed my teeth and all that, and then played in About Blank. And I mean, you're not allowed to film in About Blank, and God knows how. I mean, we said we'll just film the ground, but you can kind of see people on it. So sorry About Blank, but not much. I mean, I know who they are. So yeah, things like that was so that was where I was trying to kind of almost make media,
So with the video series, was it a decision that was just, something that you wanted to do and go for it? Or was there some kind of quasi-strategy around it in terms of trying to gain attention or trying to try to build your brand, essentially?
I think in those days, it's interesting. When I just moved to Berlin, I felt like anything was possible. So that was also the same period that I decided that I was going to have a band and be a singer in a band. And we played live played the main stage at the Garden Festival with Metro Area. That was the second time I'd sung in public. So anything was possible for me in those days. And I think that's because, I was young, I was, kind of mad for it,
And hungry as well, right?
Hungry. Yeah, I just did stuff, and that's something that I'd say the spirit of doing how I program, that's the first time. What I was trying to touch on is that the more I became well known as an artist, the less it felt like anything like that was possible, because people are watching you, judging you, or they have expectations of you, or you're supposed to pay someone to do that for you. And it felt really DIY and punk, and doing how I program, like making my own, we had conversations in the past about it where you were just like, just keep going, just keep doing it. It's felt like that's the first time for a long time that I've done anything kind of punk and DIY again. And it's been really good to do.
And you've seen the rewards, right? Because of your mentor, and you can see it build and build.
Yeah.
Before we move on for the kind of, not when we look at Berlin from a slightly different pace, so it feels to me that you are quite fearless in some respects, right? So,
sometimes.
Yeah. So, going to Berlin was, in one respect, it was almost like a rejuvenation. You had this opportunity to, you've got this blank canvas that you can just be, and you're obviously in the Mecca, right? And
it was amazing.
Yeah. But was there any sense of nervousness or fear of failure?
Huge. My friends made me go. I remember about 2 or 3 days before went, I still had loads of stuff to get rid of. Like, I couldn't get rid of it all. And my friend Pete came round and he just took it all off me. And he's like, don't worry about it. I think it all got thrown away after I left. But, he basically was like, don't worry, I'll take the stuff. I don't know who ever got my drum kit. My friend told me recently he's got my bass guitar. It's like I did a kind of giveaway, which, I mean, to be honest, that whole period of, it was mad. Like, my friend was going to drive me. He worked for Coca-Cola, so he was going to take the works van, drive all my stuff over. The day before we were going to go, he said, "Oh yeah, they've changed the insurance policy. I'm not allowed to take the van outside the UK." It was when I arrived in Berlin, Tony. You will not believe this, and this is quite sad. There'd been an arson attack in the Hinterhouse. So imagine the building that I was moving into. 3 people got killed in the building behind the Hinterhouse the day before I moved there. So when I phoned up the Airbnb to go, hey, I'm going to be coming, the lady was crying and she was just like, they're dead. Yeah. And I turned up on Sonnenallee and the whole street was closed off and I had to single-handedly move all my stuff because we couldn't get the van anywhere near. Yeah, and there's imagine like all in it's on, Neukölln, it's not rough, but it's a bit like the hood, you know. So and I've never been there before. And I was having to like literally single-handedly move all my shit in front of people that you think, man, they could rob me or, you know, and it was just, but that night I played at Sameheads, which is in Neukölln, and I managed to walk there because it was about 15 minutes walk from my flat. And I went on my own. My friend Harry, who'd driven me over, he was dead. So I went on my own, did this gig. I refused all offers of any kind of, you know, party, drinking, etc. I was like, no, I'm dead, you know, because we'd driven through the night.
So literally you hit the ground running.
Yeah. And I remember walking home that night on my own and I wasn't scared. I had this, because that's the thing about Berlin. It's very safe. Like it's, you know, women generally are okay in most, you know, like, so you know, it's not, you know, there's not that fear, you know. I mean, obviously that was 2011. It's probably different now in some respects, but yeah, it was amazing, that feeling of like, yeah, I'm all right. I'm going to be all right, you know?
So what happened next? So did you think about, you know, what you would do to earn a living while you're there?
I had enough money, right, to last me. I remember I had euros cash. I don't know, maybe I had like 2 or 3K in euros. And that was like not my budget, and I never ever, I didn't have to do a withdrawal from my bank account for about 8 months. So it was like, I was like, hopefully I can do 2 or 3 months. We'll see what happens. And I just got booked. And it was great. I mean, you know, it was like, yeah, I was all right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And did you have, at what point did representation start to sniff around, you know?
Well, I mean, I've had many DJ agents. You know what? I can't exactly say, but I know that 3 weeks after I arrived in Berlin, I did my first tour of Australia. So, to be honest, I was record of the month in Debug magazine just before I moved there. I arrived in Berlin and people were like, oh, you know, I actually had an intro, so I was sorted. Like, I mean, you know, like Berlin's the kind of place that you can go out and then someone will come up to you and be like, oh yeah, I run a night, you know, and then, you know, you're going out all the time meant that you got booked, yeah, sure. You know,
so it was essentially it's networking, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people, yeah, cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know how I was going to be able to stay there, but I was there for 8 years, you know, and everything that happened after that probably happened because I was in Berlin, really. Whether that was just not from Berlin, but the whole, like, you know, lot of touring. Like, I mean, playing extensively in lots of different places, you know, touring Australia 5 times, touring, like, going to China, places like that. Russia, played in Russia quite a lot. Every time I went to Russia, by the way, it was, because you would be drinking, like, 3 bottles of vodka at the meal before you even go to the club. And the taxis, they don't come to where you are. You have to go to them. So you'd be like, literally like, they'd be like, come on. And you'd be like running down the street with a record bag and be like, dude, I've just drunk a bottle of vodka. And it's like 8:30 at night and you want me to sprint because your taxis don't come. Anyway, yeah. So it was great. And I made a lot of music as well. I made so many records. And I think what Berlin taught me was, right, this is the thing. You are on your own in Berlin. That's why people can't handle it. A lot of people go to Berlin and they literally, you know, go home or get ill. And I mean, you know, it wasn't easy. There was lonely times, you know, because the other thing is, if you know 500 people on the party scene, that means that probably no one will call you on Tuesday, Wednesday. So I knew hundreds of people. Like if I walked past the club, they'd be like, hey, come in, Danny, come in. But no one would ever say, are you all right? You know what I mean? It's a different sort of, so yeah, I did a lot of work. But I think being on my own there was like, what's the word? It changed me, probably for the better. Yeah. It's because it made me more self-sufficient because you didn't have the same social prop-ups and you had to be really self-made. Yeah.
So give us a high point in the 8 years that you were in Berlin, followed by a super low. Yeah.
Okay. A high point. Okay, it wasn't actually in Berlin, but I played at Melt Festival in 2017, and they they picked me up from my house and drove me to Leipzig, and I went to this Ferropolis place, and it was like they had a backstage area with like this isn't really an amazing high, but it's, for me it's like the quality of the, you know, like a backstage area where they had like a, you know, fresh orange juicer and like massages, and me and my wife were like, oh, this is all right, isn't it? You know what I mean? It was brilliant, and my set was on the sleepless floor, you know, which never closes, and I think my set was, you know, like, I don't know, 9:30 till 12 or something, and then afterwards the drive back to my house was at like midnight, and we had a lot of fun, and it culminated in, this is quite mad, we didn't realise that there was a separate artist area from the main festival area, and we were enjoying ourselves. Yes. Oh, by the way, during that, I got interviewed by Toyota because they were launching a new car. So I got driven around in a Toyota car with cameras all in the car, and while a guy interviewed me, and it was on YouTube, and there's no bloody way I should have been interviewed. I wrote it out. I mean, it was my wife was like, "You're a professional," you know what I mean? But, you know, and the guy was like speaking to me. He's like, didn't know anything about me. He's like, "So you'll do EDM," you know, that kind of thing. But anyway, we were walking and we were enjoying the view. There was this amazing, because Ferropolis is an old mine, so it's like Geiger. They have these huge, massive cranes that are like 100 million feet high. It's like post-apocalyptic, so it's obviously a great place for a festival. And we were like, yeah, man, this is great. Wow, yeah, cool. But like, music's getting louder, getting louder. We almost walked on to the main stage from behind the stage, and no one even noticed. So imagine there's like a big band playing, and we were literally about to walk on. We were like, yeah, man, oh God, we're on this. So that was interesting. But I really enjoyed that, because for me, DJing's not always those kind of conditions. It can be quite hard sometimes. And that felt, I mean, that's not, I mean.
Well, I guess that's to do with, you know, just hospitality, right? Do you know what I mean? And a lot of time DJing can be, okay, you know, I don't know, beer and spirits, and very kind of like, was it cold in terms of the relationship between when you get to the venue, when you play, and after? Do you know what I mean?
I think it was more the fact that it was very convenient.
Yeah.
It was not the same kind of like, you know, Schonefeld at like 6 a.m. like, you know, the Burger King at Schonefeld. You know, the Burger King at Schonefeld.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
Yeah, the walk of shame, you know. I mean, you know, we all had, I remember, you know, yeah. So, but yeah, so, I mean, look, I mean, playing at Woody's Geburtstag, where it was like, you know, this kind of club called Heidegloon, and it's still going, and it was in some kind of like disused, like some guy's tool yard or something, you know, and it was the freedom. Yeah. The freedom was amazing. Lowe's, I mean, burnout, but like doing the Hot Coins album, rehearsing for 6 months with the live band, you know, like amazing, all, you know, getting everything, like the best musicians, launch party at Renata with Optimo, Huni, Crazy P, you know, played live for the first time ever in a full club at 2 a.m. in the morning. I had the budget for the whole event. You know, we got paid all right for Berlin, you know, like that was the first ever gig. Being outside Melt Bookings, who do like management, band management, and never going in, you know, having an album on Sonar Collective that, you know, I had everything that, you know, all the stuff, but I dropped the ball, you know, and I kind of regret that to this day, you know, that
What do you mean by drop the ball?
Because we didn't have management. And I couldn't handle managing a band and being Red Rackham and being
the artist, yeah.
Radio show, DJ, you know, Red Rackham was my day job. Hot Coins was like, oh, I'll do this band thing. And it's so annoying. We even started writing the next album, and I wrote like all the songs in German and everything. It was brilliant. It was like, imagine like rehearsing at Funk House Studios in East Berlin, and wood lined with like, you know, literally like German flags in it and stuff, with these German musicians who were brilliant. That was my like Bowie moment, you know what I mean? You know, yeah. So that was a low for me, was that I felt like I'd done all that hard work. I mean, at the time, I obviously didn't notice, because at the time you don't know when you're dropping the ball. The ball is dropping.
But that was more like, I guess, it's like worlds colliding, because you know you're obviously, you know, anyone who knows you knows that you work hard. You know what I mean? You go in, you know. And as you said, you know, part of who you are and part of how you've been is to be self-sufficient, right? So I guess
that was going to.
Yeah, that was So that was almost like.
I mean, you know, I was not right for 8 months afterwards. But the thing is, of course, I was still going out all the time and all that. You know, that was normal. But it's just that the burnout of, like, you know, I mean, it's mad how far you can go, like, as an artist in, like, not understanding how far you're going, you know? So,
also, you're testing yourself as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how far can I push this?
Doing
You know what I mean?
singing, imagine bloody going on stage and singing and being like, I loved it. And Crazy P, I mean, I'm not joking you. Every time I see Crazy P, they're just like, oh man, when you played in Croatia, and like, it was like injury, you know, and like, you know, so we didn't suck. I mean, it was mainly the musicians. The musicians I was so lucky, you know, they were the best. But yeah, so I mean, the lows in Berlin is just how, when you're in trouble, there's nothing, man. There's no, like, when, all right, you know, your you know, Russian kind of mafia, like, you know, landlord who doesn't actually own the house is just, you know, the person who says that they own it, and yeah, and they switch your electricity off and start, you know, harassing you, and, you know, you're like, you have to get the police around with machine guns, and, you know, yeah, you know, you consider getting a taser, you know, that was kind of rough.
That's quite rough to deal with.
Like, so that was 2017, and in 2019, when I was in Seoul on tour, the third court case was just being concluded. So 2 years after I left that, you know, so that's a lot of hardcore stuff happened because you're vulnerable as a foreigner. You know, you haven't got the safety network, and also it gets tiring asking for help when you've got like 3 people you can ask for help who really will be there for you, and you can tell that they're like, oh God, not again.
So what was can you recall when you was like, you know, okay, enough already, I'm going home?
I probably would have still been there, but my wife, she wanted to move back to the UK because it was harder for her to be in Berlin than for me, because I'd been there since 2011. Yeah. She'd only been there since the end of 2014. So she didn't have the same network that I had there. So we moved back to the UK in 2018. And honestly, all the COVID stuff that happened and how I program and all my journey, I don't think I would have been able to do that in Berlin. I don't know, but it was being in Bristol, right, which is small, sleepy, doesn't feel like there's much going on there. You know, obviously there is, but maybe if you're a bit younger, it was a great place to go. It was hard. It was bloody hard, you know, but, you know, because it's like, oh my God, I'm like clinically bored. Because imagine like I'd like, you know, dopamine on tap for 8 years, and then you're in like St. George, where there's just like this little quiet, you know, kind of, you know, the
slight contrast.
Union, the sort of St. George flag pub, you know, and but so moving back to the UK was definitely the reason that I was able to get all this stuff together, because there wasn't the distractions, and, you know, Yeah.
So in terms of your identity as an artist and producer, how do you looking back, do you see it as something that's been evolutionary? And what I mean by that is, you know, you've had your, you know, obviously Red Rackham identity, Hot Coins identity, and obviously, you know, now you know, Danny Bird, you know,
how I program,
getting back into education, right?
Yeah.
So have you not? I wouldn't say that you've left behind Hot Coins or you've left behind Red Rackham, but how do they sit with where you're at now? Well,
yeah, I guess it kind of, there's a point where you've got to question the health issues of how you earn your living. So, you know, I sometimes had to phone my wife from an airport and be like, I'm having a meltdown. I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, I've got to play.
When you say meltdown, what do you mean?
Like, you know, really bad panic attacks and things like that, you know, from sleep deprivation. And, you know, going to DJ is like, it's a little bit like being a sex worker or a contract killer or a dealer, because you basically have to go in and smash the shit out of it and then just leave and no one knows who you are. And, you know, you've got to be like mysterious and you've got to deliver. The expectation on you to deliver is high. And you place a lot of high expectation on yourself. And I guess that there came a point with me where it wasn't sustainable for me to have the living that I wanted to have as a 40-year-old guy. With, you know, that kind of like, you know, obviously you get, you know, I wasn't sleeping on people's floors. It wasn't like that, but it was just, you know, no matter how, you know, like, oh yeah, I've got a 5-star hotel, but you're there for like, you know, one minute and you like look at the bed and cry and then just have to go to the airport, you know? And, you know, so, you know, playing till 6 a.m. I mean, I remember it'd just be like you'd sign out and the guy'd be like, you didn't even use your room. Yeah, that was in Tallinn. Yeah, he was like, you didn't even use your room, you know? So for me personally, doing the mentoring and everything like that, it's really been good for my health, good for my mental health.
So in a way, you've got to thank your wife, really, for you know, allowing you to, you know, have this, you know, just pivot, switch up your life. You know, I guess it came at a time in your life personally where you needed a change. And coming to, you know, sunny St. George was probably what you needed, right?
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
Yeah.
It was really hard, but really necessary. Yeah. And I mean, look, I could, you know, if I was making 10K a month DJing, she'd probably be all right with that. Yeah. It wasn't about like, you know, I can do what I want. I have pure freedom, but at the end of the day, I have to do what I want that makes me happy, keeps me and makes everyone around me happy. You know, like, so I'm not there going like, oh, you know, I'm not like totally clinically depressed, you know, or like, you know, burdening people with how hard life is because, you know, I've got to do 4 flights this weekend and, you know, or they didn't like me in Paris, you know.
So before you delve into the, you know, talking about how program, tell us about, you know, when you came up with the idea and then what were the steps you took to kind of start it up?
Right. Well, 2019, Tony, was ironically the best year of touring I've ever had. But that was also the turning point for me because, okay, I did an India tour, right? I played Delhi, Bangalore and Mumbai. And it was, you know, I've never been to India before. Everything you can imagine, mind-blowing. Imagine playing on a Sunday night in Bangalore on the Tau Terrace. And there's literally everyone is Indian, everyone. Yeah. There was 2 German guys who basically were like on some sabbatical work trip. And I think they got on it in the end as well. That was kind of funny, but they were lovely guys, but they were like, you know, some colleague of theirs had told them to come and see me play, you know, so it was really random, but you know, Vietnam, South Korea, Hong Kong, China, you know, and then US toured, never toured US before, Denver, 2 gigs in LA, Chicago, Detroit, New York, DC, and Toronto, but I kind of tour managed all of that myself, and also I organised a lot of the gigs myself because it was easier for me to do the bookings because working with agents can be very slow because, you know, they email the promoter and then the promoter emails them and then, you know, and they'll, you know, in the end it was just easy. But again, I think I took on too much. So that made me go like, I'm kind of living the dream here, but at the same time, it's so much bloody work. Yeah. Obviously.
And question mark, is this the dream? Question mark, do you know what I mean?
I think if it had, this is the thing, I was about 10 years too late. You know, I mean, all these young pups nowadays respect, because if you're getting to do that when you're 22, it's not the best time for sort of being sensible, but it's the best time for being energy and flexible. And, you know, although when I stayed in DC, they did have an Alan Parsons project record in the room and a turntable. And I remember putting that on and being like, that's all right, isn't it? You know, like, you know, So basically 2019, living the dream. Well, you know, the dream, but you know, wow, you know, I'm playing at Smart Bar, I'm playing at Tag in Chengdu, the Berghain of China, etc. 2020, you know, paid for the visas. Round 2, you know, yeah. So it, you know, COVID, lost obviously all DJ bookings, no income, never made really much money off producing music because I was stupid. Because DJing's fast money. That's the thing, folks. DJing's fast money. it is, you can't earn money that quickly and that much money any other way, really, apart from, illegal things or sort of being very good at business, right? So you get sucked into that of thinking, oh, it'll never end. Money, boom, 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 boom. They didn't pay me for that record. I don't have a contract, whatever. So no income at all, screwed. So what am I going to do? And it's out of those situations, the fear. I mean, I had to go on universal credit.
Yep.
Can you imagine? I mean, I'm no disrespect to anybody, but I was on the dole for, when I was young, a lot, like 7 years. And if you added it all up, it was 7 years. I had to do the Prince's Trust volunteers. The only reason I got an Apple Mac computer was because I did the Prince's Trust, and they lent me. It was like I was really not in a good shape. 30 quid a week. No prospects. So I've been there. You know what I mean? It wasn't handed to me. So to go back on universal credit and have to have a work coach and a diary and all that, it was horrible. But obviously, there
was context to it as well, right? So
yeah. But what I mean is that was maybe my ego needed that. It wasn't even ego; it was just fear. It's just frightening. And I wasn't going, oh, I'm a terrible person because I'm on universal credit. It was more like, shit, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I started to do Twitch like everyone else did. And I thought, I'll do Twitch and I'll build it up. I'll do it every day. I'll do Twitch and then I'll make money off the subscriptions and all that. And after about 2 months of doing it every day, I was like, I think I made 70 quid. But you know what it did? It got me to stream. I could stream live from my studio, which I'd never done before. I'd done internet radio years ago in Nottingham on dial up, but it was very sketchy. So this was like, I got a camera. I bought a camera. I basically, what I did was I sort of slowly, I basically created an environment that was professional for myself. And that was another thing that I remember thinking, it was so apparent when I was DJing all the time. I never ever bought anything for my studio. I never bought any, it was like always just out DJing. I'd produce, but I never really invested that much in me or where I was. So when COVID happened, and obviously I was skint, when I started to slowly get my stuff together, it was so amazing to be like, oh, I'll buy a 38-inch widescreen BenQ monitor that's nice, that isn't my 14-inch little MacBook Pro that's got the A and the S keys rubbed out because, I've used them so much. I bought a Mac Mini in January 2021, M1. Great machine. You know what I mean? It was amazing to sort of finally be like, you know what, I'm gonna get some good stuff.
Yeah, but then also I think it was the transition from thinking about yourself as an artist or producer or label owner or whatever to actually being a media
professional,
right? And that takes you in a different place.
Sure. So doing the Twitch, there's no way I would have done how I program without the Twitch. So God bless the Twitch. It was tough. There was days when it was like blazing sunshine outside. You weren't allowed to go outside. And I was, because of COVID, and I was twitching and, basically there'd be 10, 15 people. I had a crew. Sometimes there'd be 50, sometimes there'd be, Jody Wistenhoff from Way Out West. He popped up one day and was like, all right, mate. And I'm like, oh, wow. So obviously some people were talking about it. It was great. I just played records and spoke. I didn't DJ. I just literally put tunes on and talked. I think I called it the Berman Sermon. Yeah. So I did that, right? And that was obviously how I got into it. And then that transitioned into starting a Patreon because I thought, well, I've got a crew of people and they were always like, can you do live production on the Twitch, right? We want to see how you make tunes. But honestly, OBS is hard. The technical level that I needed, I had to get a lot of technical support and help, and people helped me, but it was not, I didn't enjoy that sort of feeling of things going wrong. And so I did do some live production sessions on Twitch, but I didn't enjoy it. It felt sketchy. Pushing my Mac to the fan on my Mac was like, like that. So I started to use, a guy that booked me to play in London, basically he did some kind of training course for financial stuff. And he used a thing called Calendly for the meetings. And I was like, wow, there's a Zoom link in the email. So Calendly, when you make a booking on Calendly, so you create an event, and then when people attend that, it automatically emails them the Zoom link. So essentially what I did was I created my whole system of doing it. So Patreon is like where people sign up and all that kind of stuff. MailChimp is where I do my newsletters. Canva is where I make the graphics for like the masterclasses and things like that. DaVinci Resolve, it's free. Like
it's amazing.
And it's a great editing package. And the reason it's free is that they want you to buy like the hardware and stuff like that. So they want you in a bit like SSL, with the plugins. Oh, it's enough $39.99, Tony. You've got the full lot. But I don't want to pay 14 quid a month because I've nearly got them all just outright. So you know what I mean? Yeah. I had to honestly imagine. I couldn't imagine at the time the picture of how was I going to make it work. I got Patreon. It's like you got Patreon, you got Zoom, you got Calendly. It felt really, I felt quite autistic about it in that I couldn't visualize it, but it worked. It was the fear of it not working was making me not trust that it was going to work. But yeah, so it was like Patreon, Zoom, Calendly, MailChimp, Canva, DaVinci Resolve. It's a lot. Subscriptions.
Yeah. But at the same time, if we cast our mind back to that time, I think a lot of people had to consider, everyone had to consider what the hell they're going to do in terms of trying to earn a living.
Yes.
Particularly people who earn a living from the creative industry,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And nighttime economy. So what I thought was interesting is that there was a few people around who were looking at how they could essentially, sell their skills. So there's people like Martin, there's a few other people who basically did a similar kind of thing to you. Mm-hmm. And I believe that actually that's going to be a new generation of, what you're doing and what you guys are doing is almost like an extension of what producers will be doing moving forward, where at some point in your career, using your skills as a way of earning an income, where I think everyone's going to have to be mixed portfolio, right? Whether you're DJing, producing, making records, selling records, have some kind of music business. But if you are a producer or an artist, considering the fact that you can sell your skills in some shape or form, whether you do what you have done with the How I Program brand, or doing mentoring and selling, your services that way, or selling your services to education establishments, is definitely a way forward.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is I'm really grateful that I have my video editing background and my teaching background. I was I would say, a terrible teacher because I was in my late 20s. I used to meet my students at a warehouse party, and be like, so it was not, I wasn't probably the best teacher in the world, but I was trained, I have a qualification. And yeah, for me, it adapt or die. Adapt or die, and I tell you what, I've managed to be okay since December 2020, and I started it in August 2020. That is unbelievable, and we've had over 400 people in the group.
Yeah, well, show us on your...
I'll get the old I can explain in a less abstract way.
Yeah.
Okay.
While Danny's setting up, if you've got any questions you want to ask, stick them in the chat, in the Twitch chat, or indeed, if you guys got a question in your audience, just let one of our people know. All right. Cool.
Yeah. So basically, with Patreon, which is what I use, it's a membership platform thing. There's a thing called tiers, and a tier is the level of your commitment or your interest or whatever. So you price the tiers differently, and obviously the more people pay, the more they get. So essentially, I started off with 3 tiers. I started off with the Pocket Operator, which is 2 tracks a month from me. So I gave away 2 unreleased tracks every month, and I couldn't believe the amount of unreleased tracks that I had, because I've done that for It's August 2020. So 2 tracks every month since August 2020. It's a lot of tracks. And then the the £20 a month one, that's the Masterclass tier. So what that was is every month I invite a legendary or gonna be legendary artist. So we've had people like Jazzanova, at Jazz, Rick Wade, Cynthia, Nicky Nair, you know, all sorts. And I really, for me, that's been a way of me. It's like creativity. It's like A&R, basically. You know, we've had Joshua on. My name is Joshua, who's also been part of this project. He's one of the mentors on this project. I really like to sort of not, you know, it's like I appreciate lots of different music, and I want to shine a light on certain artists, or not, in the end I want to show them respect for what they do. So I've been inviting them on as guests and paying them, and it's all done legit. And it's a 2 to 3 hour masterclass every month, and we've had some unbelievable moments. We had just last Tuesday Danielle from Crazy P showing us the writing process of unfinished music from their next album. So, literally, here's the demo, and then here's what Chris Todd did to the, literally, and she's recording the vocals on a little Samsung, like a USB clip-on mic that on her laptop as guide vocals. So we're getting really the nuts and bolts of what people are doing. Posthuman did a whole thing about how to sell how to do your music on Bandcamp, how he, things like, for example, that you can define from your customers what city they're from. You can say only show people from New York that bought records off me. And then when he's playing in New York, he just DMs them going, hey, I'm playing in New York. Do you want guest list? All these hacks and tricks and just knowledge from all these guests. Ian Pooley. I mean, Ian Pooley said to me, he said, I asked him again and again very nicely. And then eventually he said yes. And I was like, oh, Ian, thanks for saying yes. And he said, you're a very persistent man. And here I am. He's so German. He was just like, you are very persistent. And here I am, So it was like really sort of like, amazing things, like Rick Wade talking about, when Theo Parrish moved to Detroit and no one knew him. Yeah. And he was like, no one gave him a chance. And, all this, like really amazing stories. And then the next one is the Masterclass archived here. So that is if you've missed stuff. So essentially all the different masterclasses that we've had, you can watch 2 a month and that, and you can see you've got Moose T, Arup Roy, CL, Violet, you name it, Charlton, Titonton Duvante. Andreas Sarg did one about, he did the soundtrack to a Nintendo game, wrote the whole thing from, scratch. And he was showing all the cutscenes, like literally the bit where it's the video and his music in his Cubase and how it's all synced. And and then where is it? The mentoring. So the group mentoring, which is full. And then I've got the new one, which is, that's currently full as well. Sorry. Yeah. So this is like, imagine like I try and do artist development for the people in my group. So I obviously show them music production stuff. I do a live production session every month where I make tracks or show, like we did last night. It was Tuesday yesterday. Yeah, Swing. Last night we did Swing. And I did the thing where you slow the track down to 70 BPM and you go like, do-ju-ju, ju-ju-ju-ju-ju-ju-ju-ju on the hi-hats, and then you speed up. It's, so, and also showing how essentially like the slower the beat is, the more, you can't play that out of time if you're programming it in at 130. You can't. You're not. There's no control. So if you slow it down to 70, you can make it really, and then it's suddenly when you speed it up, it's like, well, funky. So yeah, group mentoring is, it's all ongoing. So there's people in my Patreon who literally started in August 2020 who are now still there. And I like, there's people in Bristol that they're my friends now, like we go out, we do stuff, like we all go to clubs, or, we go out for some food, or, and then it's turned into in real life stuff as well. I've been doing co-production. So I've been basically working with artists where I will go in the studio with them, usually Pirate Studios, and go in and like, basically we'll work on, I'll help them finish their tracks off. Yeah. I'll do mix engineering. All sorts of stuff's come from it. And then the latest thing I've been doing is the 6-month intensive one-to-one course. And that's like a kind of you know,
an extra tier to this.
oh no, that's off Patreon.
Right.
Yeah, but that's like, imagine like it's totally bespoke, so it's completely tailored to the, you know, so it's like, okay, if you're not a very experienced producer and you just want to be a better producer, I will help you with everything I know, and we'll make it fully focused on music production. If you are a good, more experienced producer and you want to sort of like transform, you want to basically start a new artist project, or you want to raise your profile, you want to start releasing and have momentum, etc. You know, so I really tailor it to whatever the needs of the people are.
Yeah.
And that's, I've been doing that since September last year. And yeah, that's been amazing. Imagine like once a week, I have a one-to-one with a person, and just, you know, you live it with them, you know, loads of planning, loads of, you know, so basically, yeah, it's been really, it's all, you know, it's all just kind of come, you know, it's like snowballed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, first of all, it's remarkable, you know. I think that, you know, particularly for sticking it out, because I think that, you know, there are a lot of people who, you know, used COVID as a time to kind of pivot, right, in lots of different ways, particularly around either doing online stuff or developing a Patreon. And it's as you know, it's a lot of work to keep it going. So what is it about, you know, I think it's about you and your character. You know, you're very determined, you're very stubborn, as Ian pointed out. And these are things, and I guess for you, you want it to succeed, right? So in terms of this whole project, how do you manage your time in terms of, you know, dealing with, you know, the logistics of putting the, you know, the content together, the obviously preparing the program, you know, dealing with the logistics of dealing with human beings?
I have no idea, Tony. It's really demanding. I should have had people working with me a long time ago. I've been trapped in that, you know, I'm so busy running it. It's like, do you work for the business or on the business? You know, I'm most certainly working for the business. I think that you said about people doing it in COVID and then not doing it anymore. But it was kind of successful from the minute I started doing it, in that, you know, the people that were there, the quality of them, their interest and respect for music. And it was like the music industry and DJing and all that, it didn't feel like it fitted me. You know, there was no love, you know, it was just money, business, and how cool are you? And, you know, can I be your, you know, should I be your friend? You know, and whereas this was like, I created,
it's on your terms,
like my utopia of like, let's just be into music. Let's like, you know, completely fanboy over old Theo Parrish records, or, you know, Digo, or, you know, just like, I just like publicly bared my love affair with music, you know, and it attracted people that were also, and look, there's people there's people who make tech house, there's people who make garage. It doesn't matter. You know, I don't care what music you make. If you believe in what you're doing, if you're passionate and you care about the music, you know. So that's been the thing where I didn't want to walk away, Tony. I didn't want to go back to the cold music world, you know what I mean?
Well, you know, I mean, I guess the key thing in there is that, you know, the people that you're working with, it's inspiring on a day-to-day basis. You know, for someone who also works in education and also works on programs with developing artists, etc., it's really rewarding just to see how people grow and develop, right? And really value the time that someone takes to listen and to support and to nurture, right? And that stuff, you know, is like gold, you know, particularly.
It's life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
For everyone.
Yeah. Just see if we've got any questions.
Yeah, there was one that came through. If you just repeat it on the mic.
Absolutely.
Which is the most popular tier of your Patreon, i.e. most subscribed, and why do you think that is?
Yeah. So the question is, which on your Patreon, Danny, which is the most popular tier, and why do you think that is?
Well, it's interesting. Historically, it was the Masterclass tier, the 20 quid one, because every month is a new guest, which brings different people. So sometimes people will just sign up to see one Masterclass and then they're not interested in the next month's guest. Some people stay forever. So it was that for a while. But then when I really started to sort of ramp up the group mentoring, it became the group mentoring actually ended up being more popular, because there was way more people getting way more out. You know, the retention on the lower tier is not going to be as high, because there is such a lack that you don't need. There's no commitment. 20. It's like 20 quid. Cool. See, whereas the higher cost tiers and the group mentoring, where you're getting a personal relationship with a person. So that ended up being that it got to the point where I actually couldn't cope. And you can imagine I was group mentoring 5 groups of people.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, that had 10 people in each group. Yeah,
You need to delegate, my friend.
It was, yeah. So do you know what? Now I'm really enjoying the 20 quid tier. I'm right into the 20 quid tier. Yeah. But this is it. You get yourself in situations where you're like, okay, I've got to back down from this now. And, that's the evolution of the business. It doesn't mean it's right. I mean, sure, I made lots of mistakes, but your comforts, I mean, look, at the end, it's an evolution towards something being better, hopefully for you, or trying to make it better,
Yeah, I would say that. I think that with the £20 tier, that's a passive experience, right? Whereas the group thing is an active one. There's generally this kind of, it feels much more connected, right? Because it is, a group experience.
But we've got to mention the Discord, by the way, which I can't show because I would love to show it, but it's a kind of, it's not cool for privacy. But the Discord, basically, I've got. Discord is like a private chat room, so it's your own forum. And I it's got like tech talk. It's got all these different like feedback channels, so people can post their music and get feedback. So other producers and me will, help give them feedback. We've got like everything. We've got like cooking and trainers and all sorts, television and and also the self promo, which is like where if you're doing an event or you've got something coming out, promote about that. Social media help, which is where people post their posts and then other people can then like the post or what else is there? Offers and requests. So that's like, hey, I'm looking for some remixers, and we've had this is an amazing moment. Posthuman and Ewan McVicker played on the Lot Radio in New York, and they played a track by it's Void Complet, who's in my group, Chog, and it's his remix of Future Self, who's also in my group, who's called Yan, right? So it's one of the artists in my group remixing the other artist. It was signed by Waze and Odyssey to his Street Tracks label, and then imagine fast forward, because that was last year, and Posthuman, who's pretty much like one of the top names in acid and currently in the world, and Ewan McVicker, who's like uber famous, really success story guy, and they're playing it and dancing and going crazy on the Lot Radio. Posthuman was a guest on my Patreon. Amazing. And Ewan McVicker was briefly in the group because he's really a friend of Posthuman. So he came on for a couple of months so it just felt that was a real moment to see 2 people in my group who didn't know each other at all having their music supported by these top level DJs on the Lot Radio. It's nice. Cool.
Those moments are nice.
And
I think that particularly when what you're doing makes that happen. Do you know what I mean? And you've, a lot of what you're doing with how a program is about facilitation, right? Facilitation relationships and allowing people to come together, with music, right? And, and have a safe space to grow and evolve, right?
Safe space, definitely. I've never, ever had to moderate the Discord, ever. No one's ever said anything bad or done anything bad. I mean, I did consider, I probably should have rules on there, but I've never had to do that. And because I don't know, it's just, it's not spammy. It's it's about us. It's not about.
And also it's an extension of Patreon, right? Do you know what I mean? It's an extension of that. So there's, it's not a public facing Discord.
No.
It's almost like it's a business. If anything, it's a business to business platform, right? Where people know why they're there and they know that they're part of this community that is very dedicated to music production. So you'd like to think that people would want to focus on that.
Sure, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful because, the whole community aspect of it as it's spilled over in real life events. So I've done events. I've been doing events in Bristol, the Love In, and basically we've been getting all of the people in my group to perform, and then I've been inviting a previous Masterclass guest to do a workshop. We had Nicky Nair in December. And it was amazing. It was like he was literally writing a kind of brand new track in live on a big screen, and then DJ till the early hours. And but doing events is bloody hard work.
Yep, it is.
Oh, it's a grind.
Yeah.
Hello, Rachel.
So we've got some more questions from the chat room.
Yes.
So just to say, the last question was from Joe Francis. So,
Thanks, Joe Francis.
this next question comes from Chunky Dwinks. When producing and releasing music, how multi-genre do you feel you can go? Is it the more focused the better, or okay to branch out for DJing also?
Cool. So, the question,
Yes.
in terms of DJing, producing records, is it about trying to be smart with being multi-genre, or to narrow in on one particular genre?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I've made lots of different types of music and I've sometimes done new names for them. I would say nowadays that sadly, because people's bandwidth is so small, that it's probably better to do everything under one name, because then, right, it's... Okay, look at Nicky Nair, for example. His new single on Studio Barnhouse is like a kind of syrupy, kind of weird auto-tuned pop song about, he wrote it when he had a job, and it was about his dream of when he made it as a DJ. But he also releases mental bangers with, Hudson Mohawk. Me and Ron Bass Jam did a project together, Jim from Crazy P, and we called ourselves Red Baron, Red Rackham and Jim Barron. But to be honest, if we'd called it Red Rackham and Ron Bass Jam, it would have sold more records. Yeah. So people only have the capacity. Do they need to know that there's three? Like, do you think they care that there's three names for you? Probably it's more important for you to just have what. Right, I think it's okay. Right, for example, the new modern, the rise of jungle. Those people are not on the drum and bass scene at all. The real drum and bass scene, they don't know about them. That's a whole different thing. That's the media kind of jungle revival scene. That's a different thing, So all those people my point is that you can make lots of different types of music under the same name. I think, because in the end,
So it's not about. So I guess having one name, multi-genre, in the long run is better, because then people will just accept you for what you do, rather than having to have all these different pseudonyms and having these different personalities and different ways of working. Yeah.
I've got
you anyway.
I've got 6 Instagrams. It's horrible. Don't do it. Obviously most of them are just tumbleweed. Come on. Who can deal with 6 Instagrams? The thing is, it's like, how many? Okay, can you do the socials for 3 artists? No. Can you really give 3 different artist projects the love it needs? Do you know how much work it would be to get those 3 artist projects signed to different labels, and maybe it's not like you're going to release on the same label every time. You're going to have to, for each of those individual artist projects, keep trying to get on different labels for 3 different projects, just because you think, oh, well, this one's a bit more garagey. And also people nowadays, fortunately, I found, when I DJ in Bristol or whatever at my Absolute Body Control night, I play 4 or 5 hours on my own all night. I don't play the same type of music for 5 hours. The crowds are quite accepting nowadays of multi-genre sets, because as long as it bangs, they're into it. Yeah. And I think you should kind of think about that with your artist project, where as long as it's good, okay, if you make some kind of techie tribal house, then it's not going to be the same person who likes your jungle tunes. But I don't know. It's a tough question, that. But what I would say is, ultimately, it comes down to, it's way more work to have different artist projects. Cool. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We've got another question. This one comes from Unbraska. What do you consider to be the biggest challenges in curating an active audience?
So what are the biggest challenges in curating an active audience?
Well, it kind of goes along with what I was saying there about the multiple artist projects. How the hell are you going to sustain people's interest nowadays when music is meaningless to most people because they don't pay for it? Anything that's happening in the world has to happen on social media, and it has to be on the platform that's cool this year or whatever. It has to be recommended by someone. It has to be, we're basically just like on an abyss of just of channels, and those channels are completely controlled. So everything that you experience and know from the internet is not arbitrary, because there's people who cannot be seen on the internet, and there's people that you can only see on the internet. And the same goes for the press, the same goes for the music scene, all of that. It's completely controlled. So I would say the challenge is, how do you navigate that without actually being a pawn without just being, having to defer to people. Because ultimately, the only way you can make money nowadays in the current system is the more people make money off you, the more chance you've got of being successful. So if you have 7 people it's in their interest. The more people's interest it's in. So if you're really good at making music, right, and you're just like a producer, you're really good at making music, no one knows about you, whose interest is it in to help you? Unless you're going to pay other people. There's no they're not going to be like, oh, you're really good at making music, I'll help you be successful. No. So I think the challenge nowadays is, how do you stop everyone else getting paid off you and become successful? Because the only way to be successful, audience retention and stuff. It's like Lewis Cole, for example, or Domi and JD Beck or whatever. They are absolutely exceptional in what they do, and they use the internet very well. Wolfpack. These people who, they make these slick videos where they basically they mime and multi-shoot it over music, but it was, oh God, they're so good playing live. Wow, it's a bloody post-produced thing in the studio, and they're, it's synced. But my point is, you have to be an absolute media genius, and you don't have to be, but that helps. It helps.
Yeah.
That's what we have to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get on to the whole social media thing with you personally in a second, but I think that, I guess what you're trying to say is, if you're really good at making music, clearly in this day and age, 2023, that's by far not enough.
No,
it's not enough anymore.
Sadly,
you've got to basically consider your brand in terms of your online presence,
your drip,
and how you then basically garner attention, right, in a way that perhaps is outside of most producers' comfort zones, right?
Or have a source of income that isn't involved in the music industry, and that takes all that away. It is harder then, because obviously you have to do another job. But the compromises that I made throughout my career, because that was my source of money, now I look back on it and I'm like, wow, but you needed to get paid. You needed to get booked. You needed people to want to work with you. Imagine if I'd been difficult. I was difficult, of course I was. But imagine if I'd been actually honest throughout my career and not accept, no, I'm not having my track like that. Or, no, I don't want the running order of my album like that. Or, no, I don't want to, if I'd really, really pushed back, God knows what would have happened. I tried to be as malleable as I could, So, it's classic, isn't it? But the type of person you are, and you don't have to be the type of person. Say, obviously, you should be yourself. But if yourself is someone that isn't going to get paid or booked, or you have to become the person that is going to get booked and paid and all that. And that requires obviously learning, evolving, acting. I mean, I look back on all my, pardon my French, F-ups, and I remember them all. I remember them all. People told me about them. People, I had people coming up to me in clubs in Berlin. I remember you. You told the whole backstage they were effing boring bees. And I'm like, well, I can't remember that, but that does sound like the kind of thing that I would have done. I remember this guy, he's like, my friend, he said to me, see that guy? He's an effing good DJ, but a complete a-hole. And I was like, well, I'd rather be a good DJ and an a-hole than a really nice person and a shit DJ. No, but so, you have to try and evolve, and you have to learn the skills, but you also ultimately, if you're really a clever person, clever/manipulative, you will just attract people around you who can do all the stuff that you can't do. Because look at all the people look at the famous label owners, the big label who can't DJ, can't produce, and they basically just either license or discovering people is kind of like licensing, isn't it? Hey, you're really good at that. You could be absorbed into my brand, and hey, I'm headlining the festivals, and
that's another workshop. That one. Any other questions? Yeah, cool. Are you good? Yeah, cool. All right. How are we doing for time?
It is 3:03, so we can chat for another 10 minutes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to go on to the subject of social media.
Yes.
We've kind of, it's been there. And I think two things. One, as far as online, you are a master of Twitter, in terms of being on it every day, as being buoyant and visible. You're on my feed pretty much every day in some shape or form. What advice would you give to producers and artists and people who want to obviously take inspiration from what you're doing? What tips can you give people for navigating the world of social media in terms of A, as an artist, but B, someone who has some kind of connected business, whether it's an education project or a Patreon or whatever else?
Never, ever, ever say anything about anybody personally. Rule number one. I have been personally attacked several times on social media by people who should have known better. Thought it was funny. I remember that shit. I will never, ever work with them. I will never, I'm like, nah, man, so, and if you are going to say something that is controversial / honest, because being honest is controversial, isn't it? Do not ever say anything about anybody personally. Talk about things in a larger scale. Talk about something from the perspective of this is not cool, but do not call out. People. It's called subtweeting, isn't it? Where you talk about something, but you don't say that's what you're talking about. But yeah, I do that sometimes. I read someone's tweet and I'm like, gee, where's that? Some deluded crap, or oh my god, that is an awful track, and I'm not going to say anything about it, but I treat Twitter as like just to sort of, it's terrible, isn't it? But it's just a way to sort of kick off, but without. But in terms, I like it's, to be honest. I mean, in Scotland they used to say like noising people up. It's in me, the punk. Is to just be like upset the apple cart a little bit. It's the whole scene is just like, yeah, I'm so cool, I'm so smug. Yeah, look at my video. Do you like my bucket hat? Come on, like no one's cool really. If you were cool, you wouldn't have to think you were cool, would you? So all these people that are trying to think they're cool, they know they're not cool. That's why they're trying so hard, So for me, I just try and subvert a bit. But yeah, in terms of, right, okay, in the old days, 2007 or something, I was completely honest on social media, and there was photos of, when I did my US visa application, I had to literally go through everything and, take all the photos off and, anything that looked vaguely dodgy, But back in those days, those innocent days, you just say any old stuff. You were like, you didn't realize the whole world can watch it, can read it, can judge you. And cancellation, although it's terrible, I suppose it's a accountability, isn't it? So what I would say is be really careful that you don't say stuff that is going to obviously go back on you. But really, ultimately, nowadays, who gets engagement on social media? People that annoy people that are, sanctimonious. What you attract, if you're peace and light and love, you'll attract peace and light and love. But are there many of those people who go out 4 days a week and, are like going to book you at a club, or they're probably not going to be peace, light and love. So if you're giving it the big one, like, yeah, I'm the biggest raver in the world, I just want to party, or, like this, there's artists who do, memes and, the sort of mindlessness thing that has become a thing, it's kind of like, where do you stand on that? As in, you have to sort of work that out. You have to navigate that. Right. What I say to people who I'm mentoring is that ideally your social media will be, you just show what you're doing on social media. So if you're, in the studio making tunes, if you're digging for records, if you're, I don't know, you're meeting some kind of, well-known artist that obviously it looks cool that you're in a photo with them, but essentially, if you don't have anything to shout about on social media, you ain't doing anything, are you? You're not doing enough. So if you do cool stuff or stuff, like, you maybe start a label, run a club night, do a live stream, you have to show those. If you show those activities on social media, then that's hopefully going to give the impression that you're active as an artist. I'm doing stuff, I'm doing that, and then people might book you because they're like, oh, this person's doing some cool stuff. Wow, oh, exciting. If you don't have anything like that to talk about, then you obviously aren't doing enough, or, so, you know what I mean? You have to just create the fuel.
Yeah, so you've got to basically paint the picture of what you're doing, and But what if that's something you don't want to do?
Well, absolutely. Then you're going to have to find another way. But that could be, I mean, all right, think about all these people who produce for other people or who songwrite for other people, or, you know, you might go and look at their Twitter and they might only have 300 followers, but their tracks are like #1, you know? So artists are supposed to be forward facing, looking out. Yeah. If you're not comfortable doing that, there's plenty of stuff going on behind the person who's at the parapet. And that can sometimes be much more healthy to do. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't really have the urge to do much social media anymore. I think I'm kind of.
I find that difficult to believe.
Because it's draining.
Yeah, okay.
It's you know, making videos of myself in the skate park, going like, yeah, I'm DJing and I'm really excited, and yeah, you can imagine like walking down the street where I live with the camera, and there's like kids crying in the background, and you're like, oh shit, you know, I can't get that out in the edit, you know, and. You know, like this, my street where I live, they must think I'm mad. You know, I just like walk down the street talking to myself with a camera. You know, okay, if you don't do that stuff, you're going to have another way of engaging. That could just be, hopefully, the fairy tale. I'll make a really good album, and then, but okay, who's going to sign that album? Why would they sign you if no one knows who you are? No one's heard of you. Labels nowadays, they do not want to do a thing. You have to do it all. The artist has to do it all. The label just kind of goes, oh yeah, we'll do the metadata for that. Yeah, cool. We'll put our logo on it. Oh yeah, I made that happen, you know. Recording budget. You know, so yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, that, Tony, though, isn't it? It's like, if you don't want to do social media, I do mentor people who do. I mentor people, a lot of them, who don't want to be a big artist. They don't. They just want to get better at making music, and that's totally cool. And again, why are you in this? Are you in this to become famous? Because if you're in this to become famous, you have to sell your soul to the. You know, you have to do the back-to-back with DJ Awful. You know, and you know, you have to try and create that by, you know, being their friend on socials. And so this is it. I mean, do you want to basically do music, or do you want to do success? The good quote about this is like, it's like people who are friends with you when you're successful, they're not friends with you. They're friends with success. Yeah. So it's kind of like you have to have that separation sometimes of like, do I want to do music or do I want to do success? Because they're not the same thing, you know?
But then also, luckily, I think that defining what success is important. Do you know what I mean? I think there's success that's about, you know, the trappings of attention. And, you know, there's obviously some benefit to that in terms of what you could do. But equally, success could be, I've made a record. It could be that I'm better at producing. Or it could be that I've found family in the people that make music like me, or, you know, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think it's about defining what success is for you.
Yeah, and that can be difficult to navigate. Absolutely. In 2017, you know, it was mad, you know, like I was at all the festivals, you know, like, because that was my year. But what about after your year? 2018 was awful, you know, like, you know what I mean? So, you know, no matter, you know, if you have the peak, then you have to then get a load of people to keep you on that level, you know. So, but you're right about success. It's like, the thing is, what we define as success nowadays is completely unsustainable and unrealistic, which is why you'll see lots of burnout and lots of, you know, Monica Cruz, for example, saying, I'm not going to tour until, she did it like, I don't know, August last year. I'm not going to tour again until next year, because she couldn't handle it, you know. So sorry to hear that about her, you know. But at the top level, it's rough, you know. You know what I mean? You know, people will not be able to feed their families if you're not out there, you know. So yeah, I mean, I would say, if you're going to earn all your money off it, that creates a different optic of what success is.
Which gets back to this idea of having a mixed portfolio income, right? So if you have to change the way you perform, whether you're paying live or DJing or whatever, there are other sources of income or other ways of earning money that can basically balance the book, so to speak.
Yeah, video editing, production. I mean, I would really say that if you can have a sort of an arsenal of other, like if you can have lots of ways of earning money that are related to music without actually having to always be the person out there, there's lots of people, isn't there, that they're just background, and that's quite attractive now for me. Like it's weird though, because obviously I miss DJing. I love DJing. It's like that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be a DJ, really, because production, it's hard work. It's much harder work to make a track than it is to just go up there and be like dancing for 2 hours, you know? Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I think that's it.
Cool. Yeah. So lastly, before we wrap it up, what's next for How I Program?
Okay, well, next for How I Program is Masterclass wise. We've got some great people. We've got DJ ADHD. We've got Borai in May, and Borai has just had this major hit with Denim Audio called Make Me. It's the Radio 1 A1 playlisted. It's on Football Focus, so I'm really excited because he's someone that's been going for years, real kind of underground hero, and he's having this mad moment, of like just, the big time. So I'm really excited to hear from him about, like the story of the track and, what it's like, how, negotiating with, major label bidding wars and things like that. Then we've got DJ ADHD in June, who is close with Nicky Nair, former guest. So I'm really excited. He works with Chloe Robinson a lot as well, formerly DJ Barely Legal. And then, we've got Art of Tones, aka Lorca, in July. My months are a bit messed up. July. And, he's an absolute legend, so really excited about the run of Masterclass guests. I'm doing the 6-month mentoring thing that I've been doing, the Artist Accelerator thing. I've found that I think 6 months for some people is quite a tall order. So I think I'm going to maybe do a 3-month thing, which is a bit more digestible. What's next is just kind of like, how can I put it? Trying to sort of do a better job, because so many times when you're just keeping something going and you have to look at it, from the back, so I'm going to try and, kind of like professionalize what I'm doing more, if that makes sense. I love what I do, and I think there's obviously evidence that people like it. But I want to do. I've just gone limited, by the way, Tony. But it's really, it's scary. Yeah. I'm scared.
You're legit now,
no,
son.
I know, but my accountant's like, no, you're not allowed to do that. I'm like, what? So that's weird. Navigating, like I was like today, I'm like, is it all right that I'm using the company card to do the tube? And then I texted my mate, and he's like, yeah, that's all right. Yeah. And because there's not like they give you a big PDF that goes, okay, you've been sole trader for like 20 years, but now you're not, now. But yeah, so yeah, that's exciting and scary. Events. I'm going to do some more events after the summer. More of the same, really, Tony, but I'm trying to improve it. And I'm really interested in, I've been doing some long form stuff as well. With Dan, going into the studio and filming much longer like masterclass things, but nothing's come out yet. But it's work in progress. Yeah. Loads. Okay. Yeah.
Well, may the Red Rackham / How Program media empire begin to grow. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks,
cool.
Tony.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much for joining us. See you at the next one. Cool.